Hey everybody, welcome back to my channel, Drum Psychology. It's Frank Ferraro, and this month I'm going to talk to you about a very psychological topic about how we seek out information. And this relates to ultimately how we practice, because the information that we're pulling in will influence how we go about playing our instrument. So the first thing I want to talk about is the idea about how we get information. We have so much information coming at us in the world. We live in a very information-rich age. There's tons of information online, obviously, and that's where the bulk of the information's coming from. But there's also a lot of information on TV and media that are coming at us. So psychologically, we can't pay attention to all that information, and we can't give all that information equal value. So one of the things that psychologists have studied and we know about how we think is that we use mental shortcuts. And the term for that in psychology is called a heuristic. So instead of weighing all the information equally, taking in all the possible solutions for how we want to try to figure out something, we'll take a mental shortcut, sort of a rule of thumb, and we'll use that to guide our information processing and our decision making. One of the ways that we can do this is by looking at information and getting information that already confirms some previous bias that we have. And this is called the confirmation bias. And the confirmation bias basically states that we will seek out information that already supports our previous thoughts or our previous beliefs on some topic or idea. So here's an example of confirmation bias. If I wanted to look into whether or not eating eggs is healthy, I could go right now onto Google. I could type out the search about eating eggs. If I have a previous belief or a thought that eggs are healthy and that they're good, I can simply look for that information, and I will find a bunch of sites and even research articles that will support the idea that eggs are healthy to eat. In other words, I will seek out information that will already confirm sort of a bias or sort of an idea that I've already had. Now, if I wanted to take the opposite side of that, you could type in, eggs are unhealthy. If you believe that, you can find information that would also confirm your bias in that direction. So I want to relate this to drumming and to practice specifically, because I think what we're doing when we're seeking out information is that we're using heuristics and we're using biases to guide it. Not that it's a bad thing, and not that it's something that we'll avoid, because there's, as I said earlier, there's too much information. So one of the things that I come into topics with or debates with students and even myself is, how do we practice more effectively? How do we seek out information that gives us the best way to get better and not stagnant and playing the same kind of ideas all the time? I recently developed sort of a note card system. You could probably do this with a spreadsheet or something online if you like, but I'm a little bit old school. I like to use note cards. And I also like the note card system as well, because it'll allow me to randomize some of the topics, and I think you'll see what I'm saying here in a moment. So this is my note card system. I buy these note cards at Walmart. They're very cheap, and color coding, and I start with styles. So I have styles written on cards. Rock, here's some funk, jazz, as you can see. And these note cards are to be used in a practice session. If I'm a little bit stagnant, I've been seeking out too much information on rock, I'll randomize the cards. I may even take the card that has rock, I might take that out of the mix, and I'll be forced to pick a style that I'm not as familiar with. And that would be something I could work on. This does not take the place of drum books and other information. It's kind of just a filtering system. It's a way to kind of help your thinking. You do also have to use books and other sorts of materials to study specifically the styles. But if I've been seeking out too much information in one realm, I'll randomize these cards and I'll select that as something I can work on during a practice session. If you are a drum teacher and you're wanting your students to work on styles, you can bring in these cards, and it helps. You can randomly select a style to practice for 30 minutes or an hour, whatever the session is. And like I say, I have different styles all the way through reggae. I've put Latin music as well, blues, and you can keep going on the styles, and you could subdivide those styles all you want as well. Now let's say you're working on jazz and you're wanting to work on fills in jazz. So I have another separate stack of cards that has a tab with fills on it, and we start off with maybe quarter note fills. There's also, eighth note card. There's cards that have a combination. So if you're wanting to study combination fills, and this card shows a combination of using quarter notes and triplets. And again, you sort of need other materials to help guide that potentially. But if your fills are getting stagnant, if you're kind of seeking out the same information for fills all the time, or you're doing the same fills on the drum kit all the time, use these cards occasionally, randomize them, and hey, for the session today, we're going to have to work on a combination fill. We're going to have to use eighth notes and 16th notes, and you just kind of work on that topic if you haven't done a lot of that. The other thing you can do too is use cards for time signatures. So now let's say you have a Latin groove that you're working on fills in certain subdivisions, and maybe you're going to work on getting outside of the 4/4 time. So maybe now you're going to work on some things in 3/4. And I just write time signatures on the cards, and on the back I actually have some information about what that means for the student. But you can do this for yourself too. Just randomly pick, today, we're going to work on time signatures in 5/4 with some of those Latin beats and some of those fills. And so it kind of helps you filter information. It helps you get out of seeking out the same type of information all the time. Again, I think we have these biases and these heuristics that we're using, and we're going to use the information that we already like, and we're going to practice the information that we already like and have some familiarity with. And these note cards in this system is to challenge you to get out of that system. And as I say, I like it because you can randomize. You can randomize styles, you can randomize fills, you can randomize time signatures, and these are all different ways to kind of break out of that rut. There's other cards that you can use as well for various other topics, I'm sure, and that's something that you can add in your own practice or in your own teaching. Lastly, I would say that sometimes we seek out players and drummers to help us get influenced by that. And this is a little stack of cards, and sometimes I'll assign a student a card. I'll say, hey, if you don't know this drummer, this is your drummer for the week. Find out what Clyde Stubblefield did, who he played with, what style he developed, what was his signature sound, And so that gets people to look at different styles of music. Again, we would randomize these and just like pick out different drummers. Steve Gorman, for example, from the Black Crowes. These are things that get people to not just confirm drummers that you already like. If you're looking up a lot of stuff on John Bonham, for example, and if you've been looking at type of style a lot, it's time to break out of that and challenge yourself and do something different. Okay, so this topic this week, or this month, I should say, is about playing and seeking out information to help your playing. We tend to use mental shortcuts. We tend to use the confirmation bias to seek out information that we already know. I think at some point in your practice, you have to consciously work against that. And this card system is one way to do it. It's not the only way, but it's sort of something you can do periodically. I don't use the cards all the time, and I don't use those all the time with the students. But every once in a while, you can feel the need for you to have to break out of some ruts. And it's a good way to kind of get yourself out of that situation and seek out other types of information. So those are some of my thoughts this month for this episode on how we seek out information. If you have any comments, I'd sure like to hear and see those on the page. Otherwise, my email address is now provided on the screen, and you can get a hold of me at the end of the video. There's various social media sites and ways to get a hold of me, and I'd appreciate to help you out in any way possible. Thanks for watching this month's episode, and next month I'll take another topic that has some psychological concept and relate it to drumming and how you can become a better drummer. Thanks a lot, and we'll see you again next month.